Welcome to Orensha PowerShell series. In this lesson, we're going to go over the pipeline and dig a little bit deeper into fully mastering passing data in between commands. What sets PowerShell apart is the focus around getting the shell to do more of the work for you. This means less typing and less script writing to accomplish basic admin tasks. So let's look at the basic pipeline structure. We have command 1 piped into command 2. That is the general idea behind the pipeline. You take the output from one command and put it into the input of another command. So let's look at a real example of this using some data that I have in a text file here. So in this text file, we just have the names of some processes. So we take our get content command to get those names and then pipe it into the get process. However, if we take this and run it, it isn't going to work the way that we expect. And let's dig deeper into the structure of the pipeline to understand why that is. So the way that the pipeline passes data is through a technique called pipeline parameter binding. And there are two methods that are used to accomplish this. The first is by value, and the second is by property name. So let's look at the first one there, by value. And to see if we can accomplish what we're trying to do here with our get content and our processes piping into get process, let's pipe our get content processes into get member to see what this object is made of. So we can see up here that this object is a system.string. So we'll take this and run the help on our second command, get processed, to see if any of this command's parameters take a string object by value. So we'll come down here and we can see that input object takes by value from the pipeline, but it is taking a system.diagnostics.process object. So it's not going to be able to accept a string object, as we saw that failed earlier when we tried to run that. Now, what would work would be if we took get process and piped this into stop process, because get process returns process objects into the pipeline, and then that is able to feed into the stop process command using the by value method of the pipeline parameter binding. So how are we going to make this work with our get content from our process list in our text file here? So the other one, by property name, is a way to pass data through the pipeline and match it up based on a property name. So we can see here the name parameter of the get process command accepts pipeline input by property name. So as long as our property name is name, we can pass the data to this parameter in get process. So let's pipe this first piece into get member again to see if we have a property by the name of name. So we'll start at the top here, and we have a bunch of methods, and we get down to our properties, and there is nothing that is called name here. So this is not going to exactly fulfill the requirements to pass our list of processes by the name property. But we can change this by simply turning our processes list here into a CSV. So if we add name here at the top to call out that that is the property name for these processes, then we can change our first command to import CSV. So if we take that new CSV file and pipe it into get member, we can see that it now has a property by the name of name. So right here, we have a note property by the name of name. So now we'll be able to pipe our list of processes into get process using the by property name method of pipeline parameter binding. So let's run that to show you that that's going to work. So we can see here that that did indeed work. We were able to pass our list of process names into the get process command using that by property value. So now let's look at a scenario where we want to pass data using multiple property values. And we'll look at the help for our new local user command. So we can see here that we have multiple parameters that accept by property name. And this is helpful for a lot of systems where you're creating new users, because you can then take a CSV file and pipe all of those pieces of data into the command to create your new users. Now, CSVs are easy to create new property names, as we saw here, but that's not generally how you're getting your data. You're not making your own CSVs. You're usually getting data from other commands or being given CSVs of data to use. So let's look at scenarios where we want to change the property names while they're in the pipeline. So I have a CSV file here with some data to create some new users. And let's look at this by piping this into the get member command. So we can see the property names here are first name, last name, password, and title. And then let's pull up the help for our new local user again to see if those match up exactly to what we need in that command. So we can see here some of our parameters are description, full name, name, and password. So we're going to be able to use the password property as is, but as for the name, let's pipe in the first name to this. So we'll want to change our first name property into just name. And then we'll also need to concatenate our first and last name into one property and call that full name. And then as for title, let's go ahead and change that property name to description, and we'll pipe that into this data field. So let's look at the command that we would use to do this. So we have our import CSV with our file here, and then we pipe that into the select object command, specify our property parameter, and then use our wildcard to grab all of the data. And then using a comma afterwards, we specify some new data fields that we want to add to our object. The first here, and we're using a hash table here to add these new fields, which is the @ symbol, and then in our brackets we have the name field and the expression to give us that field and data combo. So here's our first one. We're taking it and calling it name, and then the expression is the first name of that object. And then our next one is full name, and the expression is the first name with a space here, and then our last name. So that's going to give us first name, space, last name. And then in the last one here, we're creating a description field and putting the data that is in title into that new property. Now I'm not going to run this, but if we add our new local user command right here at the end, this would take our CSV of users here and create two new local user accounts for those two people here, John Doe and Jane Doe. So that's definitely a super neat tool that you're going to want to be very familiar with to change the property names from a CSV or data that you're getting using a command, and then match it up in the command that you want to take action with. And then one last thing we are going to look at is using parenthetical properties to place data exactly where we want to place it. So let's go back to our original command that we were looking at, where we're taking get content, and we'll go back and remove this name field to turn it back into just a list of processes. So now if we wanted to take that list of processes and put it exactly in the get process name parameter, we could do that using parenthetical properties. We take our get process command, specify our name parameter, and then put our get content command with our processes file there. This will accomplish the same thing that we saw because we're telling PowerShell exactly where we want that list of process names to go, which is in our get process name parameter. So this is a way, if you don't want to worry about manipulating the text at all, you can specify exactly where that list of data is going to go. And that wraps up this lesson on the power of the pipeline. In our next lesson, we're going to go over formatting and how to change the view of the data in PowerShell. So I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching and have a good day.